7 and shall apply with respect to any loan made, insured, or guaranteed under Title IV of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1070, B, minimum monthly payment amount. Section 428F A1B of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1078 6A1B is amended by adding at the end the following. With respect to a borrower who has one or more loans made under Part D on or after July 1, 2027 that are described in subparagraph A, the total monthly payment of the borrower for all such loans shall not be less than $10. Section A2004, Public Service Loan Forgiveness. Section 455M1A of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1087 EM1A is amended, 1, in Clause 3 by striking or and inserting a semicolon, 2, in Clause 4 by striking and inserting as in effect on the day before the date of the repeal of subsection E of this section, or, and 3, by adding at the end of the following new clause. 5, one-time payments under the repayment assistance plan under subsection Q and Section 82005, student loan servicing. Paragraph 1 of Section 458A of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1087 HA1 is amended to read as follows. 1, additional mandatory funds for servicing. There shall be available to the Secretary, in addition to any other amounts appropriated under the Appropriations Act for administrative costs under this Part and Part B, and out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, $1 billion to be obligated for administrative costs under this Part and Part B, including the cost of servicing the direct loan student loan programs under this Part, which shall remain available until expended. Subtitle D, Pell Grants. Section 83001, Eligibility. Foreign income and federal Pell Grant eligibility. 1, adjusted gross income defined. Section 401A2A of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1070AA2A is amended to read as follows. A, the term adjusted gross income means 1, in the case of a dependent student for the second tax year preceding the academic year, 1, the adjusted gross income as defined in Section 62 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 of the student's parents, plus 2, for federal Pell Grant determinations made for academic years beginning on or after July 1, 2026, the foreign income as described in Section 480B5 of the student's parents, and 2, in the case of an independent student for the second tax year preceding the academic year, 1, the adjusted gross income as defined in Section 62 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 of the student and the student's spouse if applicable, plus 2, for federal Pell Grant determinations made for academic years beginning on or after July 1, 2026, the foreign income as described in Section 480B5 of the student and the student's spouse if applicable. 2, sunset Section 401B1D of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1070A-B1D is amended, A, by striking a student and inserting for each academic year beginning before July 1, 2026, a student, and B, by inserting as in effect for such academic year after Section 479A-B1B-V. 3, conforming amendments. A, in general, Section 479A-B1B of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1087 TTB1B is amended, 1, by striking Clause 5, and 2, by redesignating Clauses 6 and 7 as Clauses 5 and 6, respectively. B, effective date. This amendment made by subparagraph A shall take effect on July 1, 2026. B, federal Pell Grant ineligibility due to a high student aid index. 1, in general, Section 401B1 of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1070A-B1 is amended by adding at the end the following. F, ineligibility of students with a high student aid index. Notwithstanding subparagraphs A through E, a student shall not be eligible for a federal Pell Grant under this subsection for an academic year in which the student has a student aid index that equals or exceeds twice the amount of the total maximum federal Pell Grant for such academic year. 2, effective date. The amendment made by paragraph 1 shall take effect on July 1, 2026. Section 83002, Workforce Pell Grants. A, in general, Section 401 of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1070A is amended by adding at the end the following. K, Workforce Pell Grant Program. 1, in general, for the award year beginning on July 1, 2026, and each subsequent award year, the Secretary shall award grants to be known as Workforce Pell Grants to eligible students under paragraph 2 in accordance with this subsection. 2. Eligible students. To be eligible to receive a Workforce Pell Grant under this subsection for any period of enrollment, a student shall meet the eligibility requirements for a federal Pell Grant under this section, except that the student A shall be enrolled or accepted for enrollment in an eligible program under Section 481B3, hereinafter referred to as an ineligible workforce program, and B, may not, 1, be enrolled or accepted for enrollment in a program of study that leads to a graduate credential, or 2, have attained such a credential. 3, terms and conditions of awards. The Secretary shall award Workforce Pell Grants under this subsection in the same manner and with the same terms and conditions as the Secretary awards federal Pell Grants under this section, except that A, each use of the term eligible program, except in subsection B9A, shall be substituted by eligible workforce program under section 481B3. B, the provisions of subsection D3 shall not be applicable to eligible workforce programs. And C, a student who is eligible for a grant equal to or less than the amount of the minimum federal Pell Grant because of the eligible workforce program in which the student is enrolled or accepted for enrollment is less than an academic year in hours of instructions or weeks of duration, may still be eligible for a Workforce Pell Grant in an amount that is prorated based on the length of the program. 4, prevention of double benefits. No eligible student described in paragraph 2 may concurrently receive a grant under both this subsection and A, subsection B, or B, subsection C. 5, duration limit. Any period of study covered by a Workforce Pell Grant awarded under this subsection may be included in determining a student's duration limit under subsection D5. Program eligibility for Workforce Pell Grants. Section 481B of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1088B is amended, 1, by redesignating paragraphs 3 and 4 as paragraphs 4 and 5 respectively, and 2, by inserting after paragraph 2 the following. 3A, a program is an eligible program for purposes of the Workforce Pell Grant program under section 401K only if, 1, it is a program of at least 150 clock hours of instruction but less than 600 clock hours of instruction, or an equivalent number of credit hours offered by an eligible institution during a minimum of 8 weeks, but less than 15 weeks. 2, it is not offered as a correspondence course as defined in 600.2 of Title 34 Code of Federal Regulations as in effect on July 1, 2021. 3, the governor of a state, after consultation with the state board, determines that the program 1 provides an education aligned with the requirements of high skill, high wage, as identified by the state pursuant to Section 122 of the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act, 20 U.S.C. 2342, or in-demand industry sectors or occupations. 2, meets the hiring requirements of potential employers in the sectors or occupations described in subclause 1. 3, either AA, leads to a recognized post-secondary credential that is stackable and portable across more than one employer, or BB, with respect to students enrolled in the program. AA prepares such students for employment in an occupation for which there is only one recognized post-secondary credential, and BB requires such students with such a credential upon completion of such program. And 4, prepares students to pursue one or more certificate or degree programs at one or more institutions of higher education, which may include the eligible institution providing the program, including by ensuring AA that a student upon completion of the program and enrollment in such a related certificate or degree program will receive academic credit for the Workforce Pell program that will be accepted toward meeting such certificate or degree program requirements, and BB, the acceptability of such credit toward meeting such certificate or degree program requirements, and 4, after the governor of such state makes the determination that the program meets the requirements under Clause 3, the Secretary determines that 1, the program has been offered by the eligible institution for not less than 1 year prior to the date on which the Secretary makes the determination under this clause. 2, for each award year, the program has a verified completion rate of at least 70% with 150% of the normal time for completion. 3, for each award year, the program has a verified job placement rate of at least 70% measured 180 days after completion. And 4, for each award year, the total amount of the published tuition and fees of the program for such year is an amount that does not exceed the value-added earnings of students who received federal financial aid under this title and who completed the program 3 years prior to the award year. As such earnings are determined by calculating the difference between AA, the median earnings of such students as adjusted by the state and metropolitan area regional price parities of the Bureau of Economic Analysis based on the location of such program, and BB, 150% of the poverty line applicable to a single individual as determined under Section 6732 of the Community Services Block Grant Act, 42 U.S.C. 99022 for such year. B, in this paragraph, 1, the term eligible institution means an eligible institution for purposes of Section 401. 2, the term governor means the chief executive of a state. 3, the terms in-demand industry sector or occupation, recognized post-secondary credential, and state board have the meanings given such terms in Section 3 of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. C, effective date, applicability. The amendments made by this section shall take effect on July 1, 2026, and shall apply with respect to award year 2026 through 2027 and each succeeding award year. Section 83003, Pell shortfall. Section 401B7A3 of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1070A B7A3 is amended by striking $2,170 million and inserting $12,670 million. Section 83004, Federal Pell Grant exclusion relating to other grant aid. Section 401D of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1070A-D is amended by adding at the end the following. 6, exclusion. Beginning on July 1, 2026, and notwithstanding this subsection or subsection B, a student shall not be eligible for a federal Pell Grant under subsection B during any period for which the student receives grant aid from non-federal sources, including states, institutions of higher education, or private sources, in an amount that equals or exceeds the student's cost of attendance for such period. Subtitle E, accountability, Section 84001, ineligibility based on low earning outcomes. Section 454 of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1087D is amended 1 in subsection A. A, in paragraph 5 by striking and after the semicolon. B, by redesignating paragraph 6 as paragraph 7, and C, by inserting after paragraph 5 the following. 6, provide assurances that beginning on July 1, 2026, the institution will comply with all requirements of subsection C, and 2 in subsection B2 by striking and 6 and inserting 6 and 7. 3, by redesignating subsection C as subsection D, and 4 by inserting after subsection B the following. C, ineligibility for certain programs based on low earning outcomes. 1, in general, notwithstanding Section 481B, an institution of higher education subject to this subsection shall not use funds under this part for student enrollment in an educational program offered by the institution that is described in paragraph 2. 2, low earning outcome programs described. An educational program at an institution is described in this paragraph if the program awards an undergraduate degree, graduate or professional degree, or graduate certificate for which the median earnings, as determined by the Secretary of the programmatic cohort of students who received funds under this title for enrollment in such program, who completed such program during the academic year, that is 4 years before the year of the determination, who are not enrolled in any institutions of higher education and who are working, are for not less than 2 or 3 years of the 3 years immediately preceding the date of the determination, less than the median earnings of a working adult described in paragraph 3 for the corresponding year. 3, calculation of median earnings. A, working adult. For purposes of applying paragraph 2 to an educational program at an institution, a working adult described in this paragraph is a working adult who, for the corresponding year, 1, is aged 25 to 34, 2, is not enrolled in an institution of higher education, and 3, 1, in the case of a determination made for an educational program that awards a baccalaureate or lesser degree, has only a high school diploma or its recognized equivalent, or 2, in the case of a determination made for a graduate or professional program, has only a baccalaureate degree. B, source of data. For purposes of applying paragraph 2 to an educational program at an institution, the median earnings of a working adult as described in subparagraph A shall be based on data from the Bureau of the Census, 1, with respect to an educational program that awards a baccalaureate or lesser degree, 1, for the state in which the institution is located, or 2, if fewer than 50% of the students enrolled in the institution reside in the state where the institution is located for the entire United States, and 2, with respect to an educational program that is a graduate or professional program, 1, for the lowest median earnings of AA, a working adult in the state in which the institution is located, BB, a working adult in the same field of study as determined by the Secretary, such as by using the 2-digit CIP code in the state in which the institution is located, and CC, a working adult in the same field of study as so determined in the entire United States, or 2, if fewer than 50% of the students enrolled in the institution reside in the state where the institution is located for the lower median earnings of AA, or working adult in the entire United States, or BB, a working adult in the same field of study as so determined in the entire United States. 4, small programmatic cohorts. For any year in which the programmatic cohort described in paragraph 2 for an educational program of an institution is fewer than 30 individuals, the Secretary shall A, first, aggregate additional years of programmatic data in order to achieve a cohort of at least 30 individuals, and B, second, in cases in which the cohort, including the individuals added under subparagraph A, is still fewer than 30 individuals, aggregate additional cohort years of programmatic data for educational programs of equivalent length in order to achieve a cohort of at least 30 individuals. 5, appeals process. An educational program shall not lose eligibility under this subsection unless the institution has had the opportunity to appeal the programmatic median earnings of students working and not enrolled determination under paragraph 2 through a process established by the Secretary. During such appeal, the Secretary may permit the educational program to continue to participate in the program under this part. 6, notice to students. A, in general, if an educational program of an institution of higher education subject to this subsection does not meet the cohort median earnings requirements as described in paragraph 2 for 1 year during the applicable covered period, but has not yet failed to meet such requirements for 2 years during such covered period, the institution shall promptly inform each student enrolled in the educational program of the eligible program's low cohort meeting earnings, and that the educational program is at risk of losing its eligibility for funds under this part. B, covered period. In this paragraph, the term covered period means the period of the 3 years immediately preceding the date of a determination made under paragraph 2. 7, regaining programmatic eligibility. The Secretary shall establish a process by which an institution of higher education has an educational program that has lost eligibility under this subsection may, after a period of not less than 2 years of such program's ineligibility, apply to regain such eligibility subject to the requirements established by the Secretary that further the purpose of this subsection. Subtitle F, regulatory relief. Section 85001, delay of the rule relating to borrower defense to repayment. A, delay. Beginning at the date of enactment of this section for loans that first originated before July 1, 2035, the provisions of Subpart D of Part 685 of Title 34 Code of Federal Regulations relating to borrower defense to repayment, as added or amended by the final regulations published by the Department of Education on November 1, 2022, entitled Institutional Eligibility under the Higher Education Act of 1965 as amended, Student Assistance General Provisions, Federal Perkins Loan Programs, Federal Family Education Loan Programs, and William D. Ford Federal Loan Program, 87 Fed Reg 65904 shall not be in effect. B, effect. Beginning on the date of enactment of this section with respect to loans that first originate before July 1, 2035, any regulations relating to borrower defense to repayment that took effect on July 1, 2020 are restored and revived as such regulations were in effect on such date. Section 85002, delay of ruling related to closed school discharges. A, delay. Beginning on the date of enactment of this section for loans that first originate before July 1, 2035, the provisions of sections 674.33G, 682.402D, and 685.214 of Title 34 Code of Federal Regulations related to closed school discharges as added or amended by the federal regulations published by the Department of Education on November 1, 2022, entitled Institutional Eligibility under the Higher Education Act of 1965 as amended, Student Assistance General Provisions, Federal Perkins Loan Program, Federal Family Education Loan Program, and William D. Ford Federal Direct Loan Program, 87 Fed Reg 65904 shall not be in effect. B, effect. Beginning on the date of enactment of this section with respect to loans that first originate before July 1, 2035, the portions of the Code of Federal Regulations described in subsection A and amended by the final regulations described in subsection A shall be in effect as of if the amendments made by such federal regulations had not been made. Subtitle G, limitation on authority. Section 86001, limitation on proposing or issuing regulations and executive actions. Part G of Title IV of the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1088 et sec. Is amended by inserting after Section 492 the following. Section 492A, limitation on proposing or issuing regulations and executive actions. A, proposed or final regulations and executive actions. Beginning on the date of enactment of this section, the Secretary may not issue a proposed regulation, final regulation, or executive action to implement this title if the Secretary determines that the regulation or executive action will increase the subsidy cost, as cost is defined in Section 502 of the Federal Credit Reform Act of 1990, to USC 661A of a loan program under this title by more than $100 million. B, relationship to other requirements. The requirements of subsection A shall not be construed to affect any other cost analysis required under any source of law for a regulation implementing this title. Subtitle H, Garden of Heroes, Section 87001, Garden of Heroes. In addition to amounts otherwise available, they are appropriated to the National Endowment for the Humanities for fiscal year 2025 out of any money of the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available through fiscal year 2028, $40 million for the procurement of statues as described by an Executive Order 13934, 85 Fed Reg 41165, relating to building and rebuilding monuments to American heroes, Executive Order 13978, 86 Fed Reg 6809, relating to building the National Garden of American Heroes, and Executive Order 14189, 90 Fed Reg 8849, relating to celebrating America's birthday. Subtitle 1, Office of Refugee Resettlement, Section 88001, Potential Sponsor Vetting for Unaccompanied Alien Children Appropriation. A, appropriation in addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Office of Refugee Resettlement for fiscal year 2025 out of any money of the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, $300 million to remain available until September 30, 2028 for the purposes described in subsection B. B, use of funds. The funds made available under subsection A may only be used for the Office of Refugee Resettlement to support costs associated with 1, background checks on potential sponsors, which shall include A, the name of the potential sponsor and of all adult residents of the potential sponsor's household. B, the Social Security number or taxpayer identification number of the potential sponsor and of all adult residents of the potential sponsor's household. C, the date of birth of the potential sponsor and of all adult residents of the potential sponsor's household. D, the validated location of the residence at which the unaccompanied alien child will be placed. E, an in-person or virtual interview with and suitability study concerning the potential sponsor and all adult residents of the potential sponsor's household. F, contact information for the potential sponsor and for all adult residents of the potential sponsor's household. And G, the results of all background and criminal record checks for the potential sponsor and for all adult residents of the potential sponsor's household, which shall include at a minimum an investigation of the public records sex offender registry, a public records background check, and a national criminal history background check on fingerprints. 2, home studies of potential sponsors of unaccompanied alien children. 3, determining whether an unaccompanied alien child possesses a danger to self or others by conducting an examination